want to be impressive, and I don't got a lot of time to do it. Speedrunning has always been an absurd hobby from an outsider's perspective. Taking games that are meant to last you hours, days, weeks, or months, and wiping them out in a fraction of the time. I've never seriously considered a speedrun myself before, but it's given me the inspiration to try casually on my own time. Like with Shadow of the Colossus. I had gotten really good at that one and could clear the game in around 3 hours, with an additional 8 hours dedicated to Colossi number 12, who will just not work with me professionally or personally. A spite-fueled challenge I was very fond of was refund percent on Sonic Forces. Beat the game in under 2 hours to prove you can see all that piece of garbage has to offer and still get your money back. If you get into the hardcore speedrunning though, you'll see runs as short as 30, 20, even 10 minutes. These are the runs that begin to rub up against what's actually possible to do in the game. Infamously, the Super Mario Bros. Speedrun has been shaved down to the point there's only so many more improvements to be made before it's a perfect game, clearing the game in 4 minutes and 54 seconds. Do I look like I have all day? Today I wanted to talk about some of the shortest speedruns of all time. Now, we're only going to be considering categories where the aim is actually beating the game. No butter dog with the butter on him % runs from Breath of the Wild. To narrow down the fastest games, I took the average playtime from HowLongToBeat.com, the fastest standard speedrun from Speedrun.com, and the fastest overall speedrun from the same site. I compared times and got a percentage of how much time the fastest speedrun saves compared to a standard speedrun and a standard playthrough. So with Super Mario's time of 1 hour and 56 minutes, its standard speedrun in the Warpless category of 18 minutes 54 seconds, and the any % run of 4 minutes and 54 seconds, it has a standard game time reduction of 92% and a speedrun time reduction of 75%. This made it by far the slowest speedrun I charted. Before we get into all of the nonsense that comes from throwing in glitches and stuff, I wanted to tackle a group of speedruns I call I'm literally just playing the game. These speedruns are finished with the exact same tools you'd complete a normal playthrough with, you just happen to be doing it very, very fast. The first game that fits this description is the classic adventure game Myst. Myst bucks adventure genre trends by making sense. No leaps in logic or reasoning that only make sense to the game. You're rewarded for being smart, not clever. Uncovering all the game's secrets isn't easy for a first-time player, and on average, you're looking at a 6-hour-long game. However, something just as important to Myst as its logic is its consistency. Myst doesn't have random elements that change with each playthrough. On your first and 100th playthrough, you'll be solving the same puzzles in the same way. When you come back to the game after a while to replay, you'll remember the solutions to certain puzzles. Maybe even keep a scrap of paper handy with codes written down to get through the game faster. This extreme memorization is what makes up the backbone of Myst's all pages % speedrun. The actual goal of Myst is collecting pages to return to the red and blue books containing brothers Sirius and Aeknir, traveling to various ages through linking books to collect the color-coded pages. To find all the pages, complete the game and the run, you're going to have to find all 4 of the linking books, travel to their associated age, find all 8 pages across the 4 ages, and then return them to the brothers. From here, you'll have all the info you need to complete the final puzzle and beat the game. Like I said though, the game doesn't change between playthroughs. And despite how the game makes it appear, collecting these pages isn't how you win the game, it's just how you figure out how to win the game. If you remember the exact sequence of how to complete the final puzzle, you can cut out all 4 different ages and every single page. This is the start of an any % speedrun. We don't care about anything but getting the game finished, and going to all those different ages seems like a bit of a time sink. The run starts as soon as you touch ground on Myst Island, and from here it's all about memorization and dexterity. The quickest ending in the game is to ignore the brothers and instead side with their father trapped in the Green Book. And the page he needs to trigger the ending is actually hidden in the very first marker you find on the island. It'll only give you the last page though if you flip every other marker on the island first. So you have to zip around the island to the 7 other switches, flip them, and come back. The margin for error on this part is slim. You move around the island by clicking around the screen, so any misclicks will take you off course. The few seconds it takes to reorient yourself and get back on track is when the other people running this game will blitz past you. It's possible to normalize your mouse placement by lining it up with different icons on the island. So learning how to get to the switches in the least clicks possible, while also learning where to place your mouse, is critical. From there, it's just a game of keeping your nerves about you as you flip the switches, grab the paper, crawl through the fireplace, and get to the last real challenge of the run. This is where prior knowledge of Myst is required, because you're presented with a panel that requires a code to get past. And that code is only in a book you get access to once you've collected the red and blue pages. This gives you the combination you need, and you'd never know this was it on the first playthrough without doing the main quest first. Luckily on a repeat playthrough, the code will always be the same, so by memorizing or writing the pattern down, you can punch it in quickly, descend into the basement, and complete the game. This gives the game an any % speedrun of 37 seconds. One of the fastest I recorded all day. Funny enough, this speedrun is impossible in the game's remake, since they added in a feature to randomize codes like the fireplace one every time you play, forcing you to go through things the hard way. For a different kind of game, we're going to be looking at the Yu-Gi-Oh! Chaos Trilogy, a series of PC games released in 2004 exclusively stateside, one of the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Games to never come out in Japan. These 3 were all the same game at their core, a Yu-Gi-Oh! Simulator, with the hook of 3 versions for 3 levels of play. Yu-Gi the Destiny was your introductory game. The computer was the easiest and the card pool the smallest. How you could build your deck was much more limited compared to the others, meant for new players. Kaiba the Revenge would up the difficulty and add new cards, while Joey the Passion is the most robust of the 3. Adding in scaling difficulty, over 200 new cards, and online play for once you master dueling. All 3 of these games have their own speedrun category for single duels, trying to win a game as fast as possible. And while it's pretty simple in the first 2 games, Joey the Passion requires a little more thought. In the Yugi and Kaiba games, the best way to win a duel fast is by opening a critical mass of high-attack monsters that you can summon without tribute, and 1-for-1 removal. Cards like Trap Hole and Fissure simply remove an opponent's monster without battle, meaning you can attack the opponent directly and deal free damage. Ideally, you want to open up a few strong attackers to drip out turn after turn, while drawing cards like Raigeki so you don't have to waste an attack clearing a monster. In the first 2 games, this is about as far as you get for strategy, since their card pools don't include any effect monsters that would massively help in the way dealing raw damage does. Joey the Passion is where things get interesting. To beat the game as fast as possible, you actually have to take cues from Yu-Gi-Oh! History. The linchpin to the run is a card called Cyberstein, a card that lets you automatically cheat out a fusion monster from your extra deck at the steep cost of 5,000 life points, over half of what you start the game with. Normally, this would be a huge cost, and with it being a fixed life point total, that meant the effect was turned off once you took over 3,000 damage. And once you have the highest attack fusion monster, Blue Eye's Ultimate Dragon, it won't be enough to win. Its attack is only half of what's needed. This, though, actually helps out with the strategy. Megamorph is an equip spell that, when you equip it to a monster, will double its attack, but only when your life points are lower than the opponent's. If they're higher, then it actually halves your attack. So using Cyberstein to cheat out Ultimate Dragon will put you in the range to one-shot the opponent if you also have Megamorph. This was a legitimate strategy that Stein would use for years, with more sophisticated cards like the Cyber Dragon's Twin and End, but this was also a perfectly valid use of the card. The strategy is to go second, hope Joey plays an attack position monster with less than 1500 attack, pray you open Cyberstein and Megamorph, and win! The Civilization games are a series that are probably the last you'd ever think of when thinking of what to speedrun. Those games are famous for matches that last for days, with turns reaching triple digits before things even kick off. Just one more turn is a phrase associated with Civ for a reason. These are long games. However, if you know what you're doing, you can get through a whole game of Civ in the time it takes other players to make a turn. Lightning-fast speedruns are possible in all the Civilization games, except 7, because doesn't matter how fast you're playing it, you're still playing Civ 7. This is like a fan game, right? I'd like to take a second, though, to thank the people at the Civilization speedrunning Discord, and especially user Melody, who helped explain the blurs I was seeing at the top of the leaderboards. Starting in Civilization 1, the mechanics to get a fast time are about what you'd expect. Why try to talk him into an alliance or convert him to your religion when you can just kill everybody? People argue a lot less when they're corpses. The fastest way to end the game is by going for a conquest win, done by conquering every other player on the board until you're all that remains. For those purposes, we're going to make this even quicker by limiting the game to only 3 civilizations. Only 2 you have to take out. The civilization to pick is also important, as we're going for the Babylonians. Since they're stationed in the Middle East, it makes them equidistant from the densest number of possible civilizations out of any civilization in the game. There are 8 possible civilizations that can spawn in the immediate area surrounding Babylonia. 4 northwest, 1 due north, 2 northeast, and 1 southwest. Start by developing your military by selecting an absurdly high tax rate. This limits the amount of scientific developments for your civ, while also boosting construction and military. Once you have a military unit, you send it out to the northwest before the civilizations there can build a standing army, and then send a second to the east to look for the next most populated spot. If all goes well and they spawn where they should, you'll be good. Of course, they can also spawn in the other zones a civ can spawn in, and if those happen to be across the ocean, you're screwed. With Civilization 1 having the option for a static map of Earth that recreates the planet and all the civilizations on it, that won't change between runs, which means you just have to restart and try again if they're out of reach. At its fastest, this will win you a game that most people spend all night playing in a mere 36 seconds. Civilization 2 is a similar story. Narrow the playing field by reducing the amount of enemies you have to fight, and then literally narrow the playing field by using a custom map. Civilization 2 expanded on the original's custom map feature and introduced a brand new glitch to help out with speedrunning. You can manipulate the size of the map by setting the X value as small as it'll go to 20 units, while setting the Y value to 50. This maximizes your chances of a glitch occurring where the game will try to place a civ's starting point on uninhabitable polar ice caps at the top and bottom of the map. If it fails to place a civ 2,000 times, the game gives up and won't place a civ at all. This potentially knocks out an entire civilization before the game starts. This also limits the variations of locations civs can spawn into with the narrow Earth. So pump out military fast by picking Vikings, send out some scouts, and crib kill the others before they get the chance to kill you. What's funny is that the world record run of Civilization 2 in this category doesn't even use the glitch. It's inconsistent and, well, clearly I don't need it. Civ 4 has an interesting one because in previous games you had to beat somebody to win the game. Civ 4, meanwhile, introduced closed games. Custom games where you don't have to add in another player. In that case, all you have to do is build your city, let it advance a level, and you win. Civ 3 is... forget about Civ 3. And 5. And 6, you don't have to know about them right now. The next category will be a battle as old as time. Man versus carrot on stick. I didn't even want the stick before they put a carrot on it! This one shares a lot of similarities to the last one, where the goal of the game is always within reach, but just out of grasp. Instead of being able to get there naturally, though, we're gonna have to bend the rules. This takes us to Shrek Extra Large on the GameCube. It's that interesting sort of game that came out really early in the Shrek franchise, so none of what it's trying to do is based on the movies. Shrek doesn't talk. It doesn't follow the movie's plot and introduces a bunch of brand new characters. The fairy tale characters that are in Shrek aren't their versions from Shrek. Weird footnote in the series. It's a Shrek game though, so betting odds were the same as if the tide would come in as to if people were gonna make it into a speed game. Extra Large, to its credit, does have plenty of stuff that would make for a good speed game. Shrek is naturally fast, with a run button that makes him even faster, and is surprisingly agile. You can kick off of most surfaces for a wall jump that allow you to skip large portions of levels. Shrek's ability to throw stuff that he's holding means you can complete collection missions without ever having to get close to the objective. And you can also... And Extra Large has the level structure of your typical 3D platformer. Mario, Banjo, SpongeBob. You get a big open area with multiple objectives per level. Clear them all, move on to the next, have a boss fight or two if you really care that much. Only 4 good deeds are required to exit a level and move on to the next, so you can use tricks like that running punt to gather sheep and eggs, famously durable objects. Routing is all about finding the quickest and easiest objectives that don't leave room for RNG or too much challenge. Level 2 has 6 objectives, but sorting the eggs and sheep, ringing the bells, and farting on a cow are the ones you want to go for. The game has a signature movement tech in the form of fart boost jumping. Take me seriously! The game gets into a rhythm of hopping between objectives, clearing some in the middle of others, to keep pace and get through the entirety of a world in around 4 minutes. To get to the final battle with Merlin, you need to clear the 8 preceding levels. You don't need to clear every objective, bare minimum is more than enough, but there's no way around it. What we're going to do, though, is a bit faster. See, the game has a cute map screen where Shrek literally runs around the map with icons of the levels you can enter. You can't access the later levels early thanks to a fog covering them up. You gotta play through every single level in no early level percent. See, the developers made a huge mistake, making Shrek Extra Large, but that mistake is made up of a large group of sub-mistakes, like letting you control the map like this. In any percent, where you just care about finishing the game as fast as possible, you can get past these barriers by grabbing a chicken walking around the map and then rubbing up against it, and you're there! 6 hours of gameplay in 2 minutes. A time reduction of 99.38% from the base game. Our second slowest run of the day. We're not quite done with 3D platformers on the GameCube, as we're moving on to one of the most infamous for the console, Spyro Enter the Dragonfly. This was the first time Spyro was leaving the PlayStation for a mainline platformer, and if ever there was a better ad for agoraphobia. The history of how Enter the Dragonfly ended up the disaster it did pretty much comes with the game nowadays. You don't pick it up for a good game, you pick it up to play the worst Spyro game. The game was barely a fraction of what it was supposed to be. All that mattered to publishers Universal was the game being out by Christmas 2002. If it turned on, that was just a bonus. Anything close to polish on the graphics, controls, and especially performance had to be used as glue instead to keep things from breaking apart, which they still frequently did. Enter the Dragonfly is marred by a whole host of glitches that can range from the graphical to the technical, all the way up to hard crashes even before you start trying to trigger glitches on purpose. For what we're trying to do though, we have a double glitch. The same idea triggered by 2 separate glitches. Somebody killed this poor game! The first, and harder to pull off of the 2, in theory, is the air swim. By doing your head bash on the rim of a body of water that Spyro can be submerged into, you can trigger the swim animation and physics while not actually being in water. What this does is mean you're free to swim through the air with no problems. There will be some rogue bits of collision you might run into, but something you won't run into is pretty much anything else. Because you can fly to parts of the level that deloaded after you got far enough away, their hit detection becomes really bad, and you can phase through most solid surfaces. One of those surfaces is the ground around this ring here. And beneath that is the load zone to the final boss. It's always present under the ground, and by swimming through the ground, you're able to access it with nowhere near the dragonflies the game expects you to have. After that, you take out the piss-easy final battle against Ripto, and you finish the game. This is an unbelievable time save that finishes you the game in 10 minutes, at the price of a pretty finicky trick. The head bash isn't consistent, and landing it will take a few attempts unless you're on the magic polygon that makes the game shit itself. Lucky then, there's an easier way to trigger it. Enter the Dragonfly is at war with its own collision. There are plenty of ways to clip through barriers, some so easy you'd probably discover them on accident before ever trying for them. One of them is in the same pool Spyro can head bash into. Simply run into the barrier, and Spyro will clip out of bounds in depressingly easy fashion. From there, swim back to the ring, dive in, and you're at the endgame. But lucky for you, there's an even easier method than that. Why waste time with the head bash on the water's edge when you can just head bash the ring's edge and clip straight through the ground? This sends you rocketing down, close enough to the load zone that you start the final boss without a single dragonfly collected. My favorite game for this type of run, though, is Two Worlds, developed by Reality Pump. The game was set to be one of the big RPGs of the Xbox 360 era. It might have been living in the shadow of Oblivion, but that worked to its advantage. Reality Pump pushed the Oblivion comparison hard, as they knew this is how the game would get noticed. If people spoke about it in the same breath as the biggest RPG of the era, then the marketing would be done for them. All the hype that went into making the game from the devs, the media, and Oblivion comparisons came crashing down, though, because the game couldn't handle one world, let alone two. The game is now remembered as one of the worst RPGs of the era. An Oblivion clone that can't stand on its own for fear of clipping through the ground. If you know the game for anything, it's the unintentional comedy of the game's cheesy Middle English mixed with the bad performances. Something the devs themselves mocked by the game's sequel.
Thou art a gallant wanderer, methinks. So speaketh thy mind, as doth thy apparel lie faith. A noble warrior thou art, methinketh it according to reason. Wouldst thou be seeking venture and fortune, mayhap?
Did somebody hit you?
What are we doing here today? Well, we're simply gonna beat the game. It starts with our sister being stolen away by an evil army, and it's up to us to stop them. By working for them. The game's first major quest comes by way of Gandohar, the one responsible for kidnapping our sister. He wants us to collect the fragments of an ancient relic that he needs to continue his plan. And in return, he'll let our sister go. Now, the immediate instinct is, stuff it, Ganondorf, I'm gonna kick your ass. However, the last ass getting kicked here is Gandohar, because he's not some spirit or projection. The actual Dark Lord came to handle this personally. Gandohar's as strong here as he is at the final battle. Trying to fight him now is gonna end your life in one swift fireball. This is supposed to be a sign to get out there and do the main quest, dummy. Except thanks to a few programming quirks of Two Worlds, this right here is our ticket to a quick win. Gandohar doesn't just pack the power of an endgame boss, but the triggers tied to one. This is the exact same character you fight at the end of the game, meaning that you can fulfill the final quest of killing Gandohar in the very first town. Normally in a game, they'd have two separate actors to represent the two separate Gandohars. One to represent the version you find here, and another at the end of the game. That way you couldn't trigger the ending by killing the early game one. The game just lifts him up from the final area and plops him down in the starting village, which means that if you can find a way to kill him, you can end the game early. Because, for some reason, they didn't make him immortal. It's not like other story-important NPCs in other RPGs, where they have their death flags turned off. No, they just never expected anybody to be able to kill this guy. But like I said, fighting him is out of the question, thanks to how much stronger he is. You could spend hours grinding and still get blown to pieces like it was your first run. You can't bait him away from the village to fight monsters thanks to the fireball with splash damage. You can't lure monsters back to him since there's nothing strong enough to actually hurt him. How are we gonna kill him without getting killed ourselves? Well, we actually are going to get killed, and it's going to spell his doom. The run proper starts by taking a pot shot at Gandohar from a mile away to get him angry.
The darkness shall consume the souls of man. Raise this world to the ground, and now, who did that?
At this point, he'll launch a fireball at you, which you're going to make cause as much collateral damage as possible by standing near a group of villagers who will be hit by the splash damage. The villagers work in a way where once one of them is aggroed, they're all aggroed, and they won't stop until they kill whatever aggroed them. This means they're all squarely pointed at Gandohar and will start attacking him. They're regular villagers, which means they won't do much damage, but as a trade-off, they're totally invincible. The game made the villagers immortal, but not the Lord of Darkness. Gandohar at this point is rendered helpless and will stay standing for as long as he can until eventually the villagers wear him down and kill him. Sure enough, this triggers the final cutscene and you've beaten 2 worlds. This speedrun takes a game that'll run you around 28 hours to complete and shrinks it down to only 1 minute and 40 seconds. A 99.90% reduction over the base game's time. However, beware if you're going to try this, since the developers patched this out of later versions of the game.
We patched the jumping out of Mario! What's wrong with you? Why'd you take out the best part?
For our last category, I want to show you just how absurd these speeds can get. So these last 3 games will all have times under 5 seconds. And besides one of them, not a single time above 1 second. I like to call this category Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase on Game Boy Advance. Where better to start then than the PC game Clue Murder at Bodie Manor from 1997. This is an adaptation of the classic board game with some flashy new scenes showcasing the accusations you make playing out to make it worthy of a PC release. By the nature of how Clue works, this also makes it one of the fastest speedruns of all time. To win a game of Clue, you gotta guess correctly who the killer was, what room they were in, and what the murder weapon was. You gotta get all 3 correct, and when you do, the killer is thrown in jail. By playing the game and making accusations, you get bits of information that allow you to rule out certain players, heap suspicion on them, and eventually narrow it down to whodunit. I always knew you were behind this. Me. Baseless accusations, though, are just correct guesses that haven't been made yet. Just like with Myst, you have the option at the very start of the game to end it. The accuse option is always available even as your very first action in the game. The rest of the game, collecting clues and ruling out suspects, is really just to make sure you don't fail this ultimate final option. While it's not encouraged, you can just cold clock somebody with an accusation, and the amount of evidence you have to support it is completely unrelated to if you're right. The run becomes select the fewest number of players possible, start the game, hammer the accusation button, move your mouse as little distance as possible, and accuse whoever it lands on. If they happen to be the one who did it, you win. If not, restart the game and try again. The optimizations you can do for this run are pretty slim, but you'd be surprised what you can do to shave off precious frames from a world record run. There's an optimized accusation for how to make your mouse travel as little distance as possible when you get to the accusation screen. From Miss Peacock, to the rope, and then the library. This seems to go against what you'd first think, though, since Plum is the closest to the accuse button. So why not mash through Plum with the wrench in the study? Well, the only option you really have for location is the library, since it's right on top of the final accuse button that locks in your guess. So with that, you can rule out the study as an option. This means if you want to save the milliseconds it would save to pick Plum over Peacock, you would waste as much, if not more time, moving your mouse over to the library option. The Peacock, Rope, Library route has much less room for error with the amount of mouse movement needed to get into position. More optimized and safe makes it the smarter option. All of this analysis has to be done at 10% speed though, because the run clocks in at just a hair over half a second. 583 milliseconds is the current record for Clue. And with that means we've got our second fastest run for the day! Second fastest! Half a second! For the only speed run in this category above 1 second, doubling it to a beefy 2-second run, is Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase for Game Boy Advance. It didn't fit the category quite as well as Clue did. Cyber Chase is the tie-in to the last of the Stenstrom run of Scooby movies. Only one to get a video game adaptation, and the best one for it. The movie is about the Scooby Gang getting sucked into a video game and having to beat it to get out. So you got your level themes built in for you, now you just have to flesh them out. While the game is mostly remembered for its PlayStation 1 version, the one we care about is the GBA version created by Software Creations. Buddy, we're all creating software, pick a different name. This is a classic buy a large lot of GBA games on eBay game. It's a platformer where you have to collect so many Scooby snacks before the end of the level opens. Do that 3 more times with 2 vehicle-only levels in between, and you beat the game. Except, at the end of the game, it asks you to pick a culprit out of the lineup. If you've seen the movie, you know who it is. Hey, no spoilers. But you might pick them and still get it wrong. The game has Clue collectibles. Clue-lectables that tell you which of the suspects did it at the end of the game. It's randomized every time you play through though, so if you want to guess correctly short of blind guesses, you actually have to play the game. However, even with blind guesses, it's still a 1 in 5 shot to get it right, so it's possible to never collect a single clue and still guess the culprit at the end. Velma's sweating her ass off as she hopes they have a short fuse and try to run because they got nothing. Of course, all this stuff about guessing the culprit is just for if you're into Scooby-Doo roleplay, because the game genuinely doesn't care. It'll give you the same ending regardless of if you pick right or wrong. It doesn't boot you back to the start of the game, it just asks you to pick correctly next time. So with the result ultimately being the same whether you pick right or wrong, you could say the entire game leading up to the reveal doesn't really matter, since the reveal doesn't matter. Why don't we just skip the whole thing then? This was Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase on Game Boy Advance. They weren't busting out the big bucks for this game. And so didn't spring for a battery backup. The game is rockin' passwords, and you can use them to warp to whatever level you want. For some reason, this also includes the screen where you make your choice for the culprit. Who the hell is turning the game off at the last screen that they would need a password to get back to it? Anyway, by entering whodunit, like a jackass, you warp straight to the end screen, make your choice, and well, that's it. This makes up Password Percent, a run of the game that allows you to use the passwords to skip the whole game, go to the end screen, and then complete the game, correct choice or not. This run is by far the game's most popular, with more runs logged than every other category put together times 2 plus 3. As simple as the run seems, you'd be surprised to learn there have actually been advancements made in how it works. While the game doesn't have a save function, it does have an amount of functional memory that can be stored across hard shutdowns. This takes the form of the password screen. If you write a password, restart before entering, and then go back to the password screen, the game will remember what you wrote and treat the password as already having been written. Then by pressing enter, the game will enter the phantom password and boot you right to the final screen. This takes the game from a 10-second speedrun all the way down to 2 seconds. A world record shared amongst 19 different runners. Honestly, I think it would be more special to not have the world record at this point. Like the guy who took 12 hours to do this speedrun. Hey man, it's alright. It is a pretty tricky jump. But when it comes to our fastest speedrun, we're not looking at seconds. We're not even looking at second, singular. We're not looking at half seconds or quarter seconds, not even 1/10 of a second. The speedrun we're looking at is 1% of 1 second. And the killer is already in the house. Remember when we skipped over half the Civilization games that count when we were going over the series? That's because in 3, 5, and 6, there's a method available to end the game so fast you can count the frames it takes to finish your run. Starting in Civ 3, there was a new input added that allowed you to automatically end your turn by pressing Shift and Enter at the same time. By creating a custom game with only one turn and the difficulty turned all the way down, you can simply press Shift and Enter to end the turn the second the game gives you control. Civ 3, though, might as well have concrete shoes on for how slow it is, coming in at 50 milliseconds! Lay off the cake, fatty! That is still, 10 times faster than the Clue speedrun. The discrepancy in time comes from an additional input being required to give your units the command to do nothing. So by the time of the next game with the exploit, Civ 5, the run gets cut down to only 33 milliseconds. If you're wondering why Civ 4 doesn't have an exploit like this, that's because the game doesn't let you set games to only last a single turn. The exploit would be totally useless. Come Civ 6 though, and the amount of time between game start and your ability to do an input has been shaved down so severely, you can clear a game of Civ 6 in 17 milliseconds. Blinking takes 300 milliseconds. We've been talking about speedrunning for at least 100,000 17 milliseconds. For my money, these three have to be the shortest speedruns out there, with Civ 6 being top of the mountain, a 99.99998% time reduction over your average game. That name, it kept popping up everywhere I turned. Echo Onward, Echo Onward. A speedrunning dynamo who had taken the Civilization speedrunning community by force. Not a single world record they didn't hold. They even came for the SNES port. Those bastards, I told them it would happen and they didn't do anything! How could one person take almost every world record in the space of only a year? Discounting Civilization 5, every one of their world records came within the past 4 months. In Civilization 1's case, only 21 days. And just when I thought I had seen the worst of it, the smoking gun. The Civilization 4 speedrun. The profile name. Mother of f***. Melody, the person who helped me understand Civilization, was Echo Onward. Feels fair to point out that this was not private information, revelatory information, not even information they felt like hiding, more like information I didn't spot until the very last second, and I felt a whittle stupid. I thought I controlled the board. Turns out I'm just a game piece. But what game are we playing here? Not Civilization 7, I'll tell you that much! That only has 2 runs!